Excellent. Nice to talk to you again. We spoke for the wrestling documentary for a couple minutes, which I
That's
know
good.
seemed like a long time ago at this point.
I know, right? Time flies.
I mean, listen, when it's funny that you can be like, yeah, there's been another Scream movie, which is a weird way of working at time, but is sort of accurate for you. Like, there's a weird like delineation of life that you can do. But I,
Yeah.
it's funny. I remember as soon as we finished being like, I didn't mention Never Been Kissed, and like I really like that movie. I should have mentioned Never Been Kissed, but we talked like, uh, and
But
oh, it's fun stuff. And I was such an unlikely lover of this movie, just because.
oh,
Well, my mom had passed away like a month before, a couple weeks before I watched this movie. So I,
wow. So
uh,
sorry to hear
yeah,
that.
thank you. I had skipped over like everything at Sundance that was like, you know, following the death of their mother. You know, after the sudden death of a parent, went, no, we're not going to do that. But
Yeah.
it was Tribeca, and I like Robert. I like the cast. I was like, oh, like everyone in it is an interesting actor. Let's give it a shot. I could always turn it off, and go figure. It has such a specific personality to very much how I was dealing with things that
Mm.
it caught me and really sucked me in. I think everyone in it sort of brings this very specific way of dealing with this situation that we really don't see in a movie. So I'm curious how interesting that was to you and how you sort of figure out how to play, because you also kind of have to play the less likable guy.
Yeah. Wow. That's intense.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, yeah, but the writer really he drew from personal experience, so I think that really grounded it and like really was taking note of what he was going through and how he was feeling and the interactions he had with other people. And Rick's an interesting character because he's talked about a lot before he appears on screen for the first time. So it's kind of like builds up this like, who is this guy kind of feeling. And in the one of the first scenes I filmed, I got to see Nick Jonas and Brittany Snow sort of interact and sort of hear their tempo and see. I could tell that they'd had a relationship, like they've known each other for years, and you could tell there was a comfortable element to it. And then I'm coming in being this kind of like outcast and just abrasive, and it's
Yeah.
funny. I was the whole time I was balancing these things where I'm a person people pleaser at heart, and my character is the opposite of that. So I may be excited about being on this set and being able to play this role and work with these actors, but my character is like he just wants to get out of there. He doesn't want to be there. He doesn't care about it. He doesn't. It was this funny dynamic I was playing in my brain the whole time.
Oh, yeah, and it's one of those things where you have to play it so specifically because you can't make it seem, because it is still a movie about human beings. Like if it was a broader movie, he could just be an asshole, right? And you can have the
Yeah,
fun like I'm playing an asshole, but you still have to play a guy who is also going through something. There was a reason that he liked her. There was a reason she liked him. Like there was something there. These are not his people, and he doesn't really, his way of dealing with it is I don't have time for it, and that's a relatable thing. So you kind of have to play it in just such a way so someone can be like, "Oh, that's my uncle," or "That's how my dad
yeah,
was," and be like, "Really fucking annoyed me that he did that," and that but
yeah,
actually like really huge. And I think the success of your performance is that you never get the sense that this is like necessarily an awful guy. Just he may not be the best person in the world, and he's dealing with this really badly.
yeah. Exactly. That's a really perfect way to put it. Yeah, he's an interesting character to be a part of. It all really was in the script, and I just didn't feel I needed to push anything. And a lot of the stuff is internal, like me thinking about it and having reactions and just the emotion of having gone through that in my own personal world, and then uh, to figuring out how this guy would sort of navigate through those waters was interesting. It was funny, but Roberts was such an amazing director. He set up all these opportunities, like with even just my selection of wardrobe, the car that I drove, like these certain things, the other actors, their characters. I don't know, it created a world that it was really easy to just kind of let the script do the work and not push anything too hard and understand the tone of it and understand your place in the sort of performance and film.
Oh, yeah, and you so clearly everything about I think every character in this movie, but the car is a real big thing for your character. But I think every little like beat is a character like hint. Like the longer you watch them, the more you're learning about them, and it is all stuff that you see in something. I mean, obviously, I'm coming at it from. I'm also a writer going through grief. Okay, no, I think I'm going to associate with this character if this goes well. But there are going to be people who watch it and go, yeah, my stepdad, my uncle, my cousin, but just had that car and that car pissed me off. And like that's just that the car will be the thing. And it's again, I think a lesser movie wouldn't have thought about the car. And I think it's such an interesting idea that like he's that guy who always cares about his car. And he'll still be caring about his car now, where someone else is just going to yell at him like, "How could you care about your car? Like, what are you doing right now?"
Totally. And like the type of car specifically, like that's his take on cool, you know. This is like funny. Like, what kind of music does he listen to? Like, there was all these funny questions that would be answered. Like, what does he really like to do? Like, what is he? Yeah, how does he live his life?
And I think for you, it's always got to be interesting because if you're doing that for any character, obviously you like what you like, right? So if it makes sense, you're always like, really hope he listens to the thing I listen to or he watches the thing I watch because I know that life. I'm doing that when I'm not working. But, finding the right balance, I think, is really, really what makes the character feel real. Because again, I think you might have had one of the hardest characters to play because it's so easy to just dismiss that guy and be like, oh, he's on. It's the B plot and the annoyance, and it's keeping us from figuring out what our main guy's going through. And I think the fact that you're just as interested, and if the camera followed him for 10 minutes, you'd be just as interested. It's the writing, it's the directing. And I think it's you having a take on the guy, having a way of going, I think I know that guy who listens to that song with that car, has that kind of eye roll to him about the situation. Like I can figure that guy out and I can play him in a way that I'll find interesting. Like not everyone can necessarily do that.
Yeah, it's funny to embrace stuff like that where you're putting on wardrobe, you're like, God, I would never wear this.
Yeah.
But then this is what the guy thinks is, his style, like your lack of style, or doesn't care about like things are just comfort or convenient. It was like there's this one scene where I get really upset with a Nick Jonas character, Ren, and for my backstory was that my character is really narcissistic and really puts himself first. It doesn't really, he's going through the phases of this stuff, but he's not really facing all of it. He doesn't really care to, like, it's not his thing. So he would get into this. There was this scene right before where they take a limousine from the funeral to this gathering. And Robert called me up and he said, listen, I'm not going to have you in that scene because I was written to be in the limousine. And I was like, fine. Oh, that's cool. Okay. And I like would have an hour off or something and I wouldn't have to be in that scene. But what he didn't know was that Rick got really pissed about that. Rick was like, what do you mean I'm not in that? I picked this limousine out. I was looking forward to it because I've never been in a limousine before and I've paid for it. So for Rick, it was really, he was stewing about that. So when Ren got upset at Rick for not processing it the way he was expecting, Rick kind of lashed out at him, like, because he had this anger in him. And stuff like that always kind of comes up in these dynamics where somebody's controlling, they'll be overly controlling, trying to get everything perfect, or somebody's, avoiding it and they'll sort of disappear or pull away. So it was his sort of way of like letting it come to the surface, but it was like in a misguided way.
Oh yeah, because that's the guy, and I think it's interesting to be able to play him and think about that because like you said, it could have been, I get to go have a sandwich and a nap, like that's pretty good. I'm going to do that, but I think it's like saying like, okay, he's dressed in a way I don't like, and it's a physical thing. I bought a shirt a couple weeks ago for an event that some like my friend, she was like, this is good, you look good in it, but I didn't like it because I'm just not used to that. So you sit there and you're like, I'm a fraud. Like, I don't look good in this. Someone said I do, but someone's going to say I don't, and they're right. And you process that. So I think it's interesting just on an acting level to have to deal with that, because you can put on a shirt or say a word and you're like, I would never say that word. I feel awful. Like any movie about slavery, every actor I think has to go home and be like, oh my God, what I just had to say. But to be able to process it and then say it like it's real it's a legitimate skill set. So I think watching a character not thinking about it and knowing that you did all the work it's a pleasure. It's how you can watch someone do things you don't like and still get a kick out of it.
Yeah, completely. And I think it's a fun opportunity. Robert did create this world where there were surprises within it, like things that weren't on the page, or the way he shot something, and even just setting up that group of actors that could all really think on their toes and find these little moments that were beyond what was on the page.
Oh yeah, which I mean, having that core, I think also probably makes it easier to go, well, what do I think he would do? If you're sort of like worried what the script is gonna do, it's harder to have any kind of stamp of your own. Just like I'm sure it's easier to come on set when you were, doing the Scream movies, but I know what this guy would do. I've, by the way, played him several times. Like, even if it's not the same person writing or same person directing, you can go, well, I kind of know the North Star here, or at least I have a take that feels right for me. And you can have that sort of, not power, but enthusiasm for the role. And I think when you can do it for a completely original character that you're, stepping into, having that backbone, I think, is why it works. I think, the writer is hoping you'll do that. The director is hoping the writer will do that. And then you'll do it. Like, it is always insane that this works out, right? Everyone has a different movie in their head. Nobody has the same movie in their head. They all meet, and sometimes they're good. It's insane.
Yeah.
It works.
It really is. That's a really funny way to put it. I know, it's wild. You
Well, I
kind
mean,
of like take little clues along the way, like, how do you fit into this thing? How is my? If it's funny for me in this character, I would just always go opposite of what I would be thinking in the moment. I'd kind of go, oh, and just flip it for myself. Like, instead of smiling or laughing at this thing, you'd be annoyed, or how can I get out of here? Or, what the hell are they talking about? And all these kind of thoughts that wouldn't be what I was thinking.
Right. And it kind of works because you're like, okay, everything I'm doing opposite is working for the movie, and I know I'm a good person. So okay, this is working out. I mean, and to the like everyone making a thing, you've done stuff when you've been the authorial voice, and I'm sure the first time you're like, wait, everyone's making a different movie, but this is my movie. Hang on, like figuring out how everyone to make the same thing. And how to talk to people. I think that's the key. Like, you're playing someone who doesn't know how to talk to people. And I think it's such a artist skill to be able to talk to people and talk about the picture in your head, because it's insane. Like, I'm sure when you talk to your family who's not in the industry and you talk about what you're doing, you see that look sometimes of like, you're talking about making pretend, dude. Like, what else is going on in your life? Like, no, it's important still. But yes, it's also stupid. And I understand. And like, to make it like, it should be fun. And to make it feel fun is a skill. And I think the fact that this movie is fun in a way that I don't think the description can tell. Like, I didn't go in thinking it was going to be fun. I went in thinking I was doing some torture to myself. And a year later, year and a half later, I'm still a fan of it.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah, completely. I know it's a weird business for sure. It's a weird balancing act.
Right, and do it long enough and you get all the weird. So I'm sure at this point, you're like, I mean, a little weird's fine. It's when it gets really weird that I'm like, I love to avoid the weird at this point. I've done that. Let's like have normal. I'd like to go home and have normal. And
there was only one scene where we were all together and we were in between takes, and I said something and one of the people didn't believe me. And it was something that I was I wouldn't be lying about something like that. But instead of getting defensive or angry, it was a funny take. Like, I took it in and I was like, oh, this is so cool and Rick like moment where, not to care. You know what I mean? Not to like you don't believe me? I don't give a crap.
You're like, no, I deeply care. Like, I have receipts. Hang on. Like, when you feel that, be able to not. It's one, you feel really prideful, right? And then you also feel like you're oddly betraying yourself. You have this like weird Like, I know I did the right thing by not talking back, but I also know that like I have a conversation in my head I'm now going to have with myself about what I would have said to that person. And it is like there are people who just don't say anything.
Yeah, but it's also people that don't care. Like,
Yeah.
I don't give a hell about what you know what I mean? It's a funny, like, as a people pleaser, to be able to flip that switch and not care about anybody and not like, you know,
Oh, yeah.
want to deal. It's a funny, I don't know, it's a funny muscle to exercise.
Oh yeah, because we all have the experience where we're talking about something we care about, and then you realize you're talking to someone who doesn't care, right? And,
Yeah.
you know,
That happens more than you think too.
I mean, I have a friend that I spend time with, and I've now learned the look that she gives me when I've gone too far in a story. She's like, I don't care about what the Mets are doing right now. I was humoring you, like, you know, I that was a thing that I learned. I remember as a kid, you know, when you're a kid, you think everything everyone likes, right? Because you don't know that there's a bigger world. So if you like wrestling, everybody must like wrestling. It's on TV. Like, how do you not just watch it? And then you'll find someone who goes, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, like I'll walk in the street and someone will be like, oh, nice shirt. And they're wearing different shirts. But there's also people like, what weird hillbilly thing are you wearing?
Yeah, totally.
Oh, and then you realize not that there's no good there. But it's weird that like Rick would never go well. He would just go and keep walking. And then the like shrug and grunt is a such specific person. And I think it's a hard person to play in movies just because it's not really cinematic to be like, don't care in my head. Like, no.
Totally. I mean, having kids, it's really informative about a lot of stuff. And like, that's you know, kids are really narcissistic in a way. You know, they're always like it's always about them or trying to explain certain things to them. So I don't know, some when you can find some of those kid things in yourself where, you know, kids are like blunt about stuff. Kids are like, you know, rude sometimes without meaning to be. Yeah, and sometimes they're trying to be very mean and say something really cruel.
Yeah, you're like, I know you didn't mean to hurt my feelings, but when I started to talk about this movie I made, Dad, that was 30 years ago. You're old. You're like, for that, I'm gonna go cry when you're not looking. It's fine, but you said something awful to me, but I love you still, and that's the deal. And like, it's interesting because that is the thing. Like, as we wrap up, like everyone in this film does have affection for each other. Like, they don't like him because of actions, but you know, he just didn't occur to them anymore. Like, oh, if mom was happy, that's fine. Like, that is what it is. And like, they are all sort of trying. And I think that's the thing I still think about a year later is like, it is an interesting movie about processing, but it's also an interesting movie about like just different personalities and how that's life. You kind of got to just deal with it and accept it. And I think everyone, give or take, Rick, I feel is in a better place by the end of the movie. I don't think he's a character who does go to different places. I think Rick is Rick, and that's also
Rick is in a better place because he was, you know, he wasn't feeling bad about what he did, but he looked around his house and he saw that there were all these boxes, and what is he gonna do with them? And he's like, oh, I can drop them off, and then they'll think I'm a great guy.
Yeah, exactly.
But I won't have, and actually, it's closer to go to their house than Goodwill. You know, it's funny. Like those are the conversation I was having in my head for my character.
We have to wrap, but it's here. I was going to throw this out. Do you want this of it all? They're like, some people think that's real nice, or like I was going to throw this way. You want to eat this? And I, you know, and some people go, so I'm better than the garbage. Okay. Well, it's the worst compliment ever, but we can wrap on you're better than the garbage, David. So,
thank you, Joe.
Always a pleasure to talk to you, man, and congrats on the film. I really like it.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Bye. Thanks,
Joey.